The two most common kinds of lists that you'll write are the unordered list using UL and the ordered list using OL. And they're very similar to each other, as we saw in the last video, because they both use LI to stand for a list item. The third type of list that we'll talk about this week is the description list. They used to be called dictionary list or definition lists, and nowadays it seems like they're called description lists. Maybe nobody remembers what a dictionary is. I don't know. And they have a little bit of a different format. So let's see what that looks like. What I have here is I have a term, or I have sort of a summary here, and then a little description underneath. And the key with the definition list, if you're choosing to use one, is that you'll have sets of these things. So you'll have a thing that you could call like a main idea, followed by one or more of these items. I've chosen to have one for each of these sets, but actually you can have more than one. So maybe I'll do a little editing here to show that off. First of all, the main list is a DL. Oops. Whoa, wow, my fingers just typed that while I was saying DL. My fingers were typing LI. Weird. The DL part goes around the entire list, just like the OL and the UL go around the entire list. And then inside the list, though, the structure is a little bit different. So instead of having just a single tag around each item, we're going to have multiple tags. So every time you have the main idea of the item, this is a dictionary term. Now, what do they call it? I think now they just call it a description term, which is kind of weird sounding. And then this is the definition. It used to be called the dictionary definition when these were called dictionary lists, but the new ultra PC word seems to be just description list. So DT up here, and then DD for one of these. So let me do a couple more. DT for this one, and then DD down here. So the reason why this list is a little weird is that there's not really any way structurally to relate this DT to this DD, except for that this DD comes directly after this DT. So that's the way they're related, just by placement. So there's no nesting relationship or any other way to tell that these are related to each other, which is, I think, the reason why these are not so popular. It's difficult to do anything programmatically that way. It's also really hard to style it. So later or harder to style it for that same reason, that this DD is not nested inside this DT, so, for example. So yeah, it's just a little bit difficult from a programmatic standpoint to relate these two things to each other using anything except your eyeballs. So this is what the major structure looks like. Okay, I can't remember what the other summary parts are that go with these four disciplines, but so I'm just going to write one at random here. If I wanted to put another definition and say this comes, this helps you avoid the whirlwind. Okay. So just to note that it is completely possible to have more than one set of these DDs with the DT. Again, augmenting the problem of now I have these two DDs that are related to this DT. This one has only one DD that's related to this DT. So it's a little bit messy from a structural standpoint. Let's see what this looks like in the browser. If I refresh, here's the unordered list by default with bullets. Ordered list by default with numbers, and then the definition lists by default it just indents them, but later on we can do some styling to make it look a little more interesting. Quick check in the validator, and then in the next video we'll talk about attributes. Let's see how we're doing so far. Fine. All right, see you in the next video where we'll talk about HTML attributes for lists.